We are very fortunate to have three guests here today who will be speaking to a number of different questions that we have on personal finance. And thanks to USAN for preparing these questions, and to USAN for sponsoring this event, and for all the different groups represented today for being here for such an important event, our first financial literacy panel ever at First Nations University. So I am going to begin with just asking you all to introduce yourselves and just a bit about your own businesses and organizations that you work with. So Kate, if that's okay, we'll start with you.
My name is Kate Morris. I'm the owner of Scout Financial Solutions. And what we do at Scout Financial Solutions is we try to do financial empowerment lessons with Indigenous people in the community. We try to increase their knowledge so that they're able to make better choices and act better for their own best interests, for that of themselves and their community.
Thank you.
And I'm Chris Bonner. I'm from Connexus Credit Union. I am the business deposit specialist, and my role is I help our business members on idle fund strategy, business strategy, and so on sort of things, as well as a credit union, we're really committed to our community. So events like this, think opportunities to get out and talk to people about financial literacy and really push that bar further. It's kind of what we're all about.
My name is Megan Daly, and I'm the president and founder of Forward Vision Games. What my company does is we create financial capacity in people. We provide people the skills that they need to be able to take the opportunities and assets around them and turn that into the wealth and prosperity as they see fit. We do have technology where we help people do that. We're working with First Nations University. And I also do work in the private sector connecting capital markets to First Nations and being that link point between the two for growth, both helping the nations and also helping people just in the capital markets understand how to operate within First Nations.
Thank you. So we're going to begin with question one. What are the major steps required to create a quality personal financial plan? I'll let anyone jump in.
I guess we'll start here. I liken a financial plan, like in my workshops, I actually related to the way Indigenous people actually survived on the buffalo. When we performed the hunt, we did a number of things. When we were actually able to process it, we were able to give a portion of it away. We were able to preserve some for future use. We were able to use it and distribute it to the community. We were able to help ourselves, and we did a little bit of celebrating with every hunt because we knew that we had to use 100% of the buffalo. So when we talk about a financial plan, a lot of times we think that we need to have a center of expertise or we need to have a lot of knowledge on that, and we actually really don't. It's a very low commitment time-wise. But I think it's really important that we be able to, number one, start an idea or have a plan or a goal, set a goal for yourselves, right? A lot of people say you can decide that goal later on, but I think it's a good idea for you to do some visioning and say, where do I need, what do I want? Where do I want to be in 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, or over the course of my lifetime? So if you think about a vehicle, if you're going to drive a vehicle, if everybody in the room closed their eyes today and they decided to go walk to their vehicle and to jump in their vehicle and drive to any destination, I think that would be a catastrophe. So a financial plan will actually allow you to have a better trip. So you're able to open your eyes, you're able to decide on the vehicle. You're going to pick a destination and you're going to be able to be prepared to meet your goals. So if you want to purchase a home in 10 years, part of a financial plan will actually allow you to go through the steps of creating the plan and to achieve it, to check in at a period of time, and to be able to actually attain your goal. So financial plan, vital in anybody's life. It's very important for you to know the destination, know who you're traveling with, know that you have the right mix of supplies for the road trip. So if you have the right set of insurance needs, if you have the right set of supplies, if you have all the right ingredients, your trip should go as planned.
Really great points. I think the point about the plan is the big thing. Being in the financial services industry, that's something that we talk about all the time. So really closely aligned. The one piece that we usually talk to our members about is be prepared for your plan to change, and then prepared again that it's going to change again and again. So I mean, I think about myself when I was 10 years ago, my mindset on funds and money and financial planning was very different. I got a 4-year-old daughter now, and 5 years ago, that plan changed pretty quickly from some of these things. So I think it's important that when we talk about planning and we talk about those things that you're 100% bang on, that you have a plan in place and a goal in place, be it short, middle, long, that you have multiple goals in place, but that you're prepared that life is going to not go in a linear straight line. Things are going to move around for you. They're going to change. Your career can change. Again, life moves and shapes around you in funny and interesting ways. So the more you can be adaptable to it, and your point about who you're going on the journey with, the vehicle you choose is a metaphor that I know many people use, including myself, which is awesome. But it's that piece that you got to make sure that you have someone to help guide you. It's not someone to tell you where to go, but it's to help you along the way. So that's what we are there to do.
My belief is that a plan reiterates a few of those things where we're talking about what is success. And I think that that's kind of where some different groups in the industry, I think, struggle a bit, where they kind of impose success, where success feels like it's the acquisition of stuff, as opposed to where do you actually want to be? What are the experiences you want, whether it's family or travel or housing, a second home, not in the city. People can have a lot of different visions of success. And I think that that's really important, because then when you back it up, you can, like you say, talk about the pathway to get there and have those measurement milestones. And the advantage to having those milestones along the way is that then you can assess whether it's working or not. And if you don't have an assessment of goals kind of nearer term, it's hard to pivot and say, well, this is where I was trying to go. The road I chose is getting a little bumpy. You get to pivot early. And if people don't have the plan part, maybe just the goal, they don't get to change course. They think they're heading east, and then they realize 5 years later they've been heading west the whole time. It's unfortunate. So the goal, and also what are the milestones that you want to hit along the way.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you each for the perspective on your answer on that. Question number 2. We are often told that we need to live below our means. What does this mean, and what are some good strategies to help young people get into the habit of regularly saving from each paycheck, the pay yourself first strategy?
I can jump in here. I think in a lot of ways it comes back to balance. So we don't want to get in front of people and tell them, like, this is the path that you're on and this is how you do it and all of those different things. It's about talking about, okay, what does success look like? How can you do certain things, and how can you get into habits that create that positive focus on savings or whatever those goals look like? So, the goal isn't to tell someone, hey, you need to save money, so therefore you can't go do anything, right? That doesn't really resonate with anyone, especially a young person. They're usually pretty rebellious in their early years, and I know I was no different. So somebody telling me, hey, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that, probably didn't resonate. But somebody who comes in and gives you kind of that perspective of saying, look, you know what, if you want to go do this, this is all you got to do. And if you set it in motion earlier is better than later. And again, balancing between, the loan payments, the savings, and the spending.
Okay, I guess I'll go second. The phrase living below your means, I think, is what it means is essentially that any type of source of income, any type of inflow of cash into your household is exceeding or greater than what is flowing outside of your household, whatever is released in terms of expenses. So living below your means that you're making choices, or that you're living such that your expenses do not exceed your income. Some of the strategies that you could use for young people to get into the habit of regularly saving from each paycheck, there are a number of things that you can do. And number one, I think, again, this ties back to your financial plan. You're going to need to set some kind of goals or ideals or something that you want to plan and prepare for. Number two, I think you need to establish a budget, and a workable budget that works for yourself, very similar to what he's saying. I referenced that you have to actually be able to meet all of your needs, enjoy some of your wants, and be able to create a surplus in your expenses so that you can designate that towards savings. A third thing that you could probably do is be able to maybe meet with one of your financial advisors or your banking rep, or do some research online as to what types of saving tools would be able to benefit you best. You want to make sure that there interest savings accounts, because you also want your money to be able to work for you. And the best way that you can do that is to put your money into an interest savings account that actually will be in line with the timeline for your goals and when you're going to be able to withdraw that resources. I think one of the other things that you could probably do is to make it an automatic contribution to your savings account. And what that means is, once you've set up your budget and you set your goals, you have to be able to say that I will be able to commit this portion of amount on a regular basis and have it set up so that it automatically when on the day that you get paid, make sure that it leaves your account the very next day to your savings account. And again, as he referenced in the financial plan, by all means, check in and see what you're doing. Like, check in to see if it's producing the way you need it, if your goals have changed, if your timeline has changed, so that you can adjust it accordingly.
I think the adjustment piece you talk about is really important there. And I think often when we present, especially to young people savings, we present it as a concept, not an action. And an action that takes practice. It's something that you constantly have to do, and you have to find one that works for yourself. And I would say there's two pieces of savings I think are really important. And one is to frame savings as an expense. You can skip it and not great things will probably happen, but it's not optional. And I think sometimes even when we frame the budget, showing a savings as though it was extra, I think we're better off showing savings as an expense. So when the person sets up their plan, savings is a technical expense. And then you practice it. So you do it for 3 months, you do it for 6 months, see if it's working. And if the way you're doing it isn't working, shift it up. And when we're looking at young people going into more contracting roles, more consulting roles, you've got inconsistent income. How people saved 30 years ago is very different to how young people are saving today. And this idea of, I think we have a little bit too much in our culture about consumer affairs, 5 ways to save $5. That to me doesn't take people into the action of saving. Saving money on an item is not, as you say, putting money in your savings account. And we need to be really clear in somebody's financial plan. You got a pair of jeans on sale. No, you are not saving money. Putting money off to the side in your savings account and how you actually structure that takes practice. And that's something where the earlier you start, the better, because once you want to be 25, knowing how to save. You don't just want to be able to tell somebody the definition of what savings is. How are you doing it? And also acknowledging that probably when you leave school or you move into a career, you shift careers, how you're saving is probably going to change because your income is changing too.
Excellent. Thank you guys so much. That was that was great pieces of advice on savings and how students can really set aside money for many different reasons in their lives, for their financial goals, which is what certainly what we're trying to do here in this class this semester is help them actually identify what those goals are and how can you get there, right? Mapping out the road ahead. We're going to segue into question number 3. Can someone explain what the time value of money is and why it is such a crucial concept to retirement planning? And why, if I might add to that, why students might want to start thinking about financial planning, even though for many they think it's too soon, too early on.
Sure, yeah. I think one of the sayings I like to use when it comes to that piece, as far as, it's the old adage that, well, when's the best time to start saving, right? It's when you're young. And when's the second best time? It's now, right? I think I've heard you say that before too. So, the time value of money piece it revolves around starting early, saving what you can, and the longer that the money is in there, the more time it has to compound, the more savings you generate. And again, at the end of the day, the longer you have your money working for you, the longer and the more money you have at the end. So it can be a small amount. We talk about it in a number of different classes. Certain investment vehicles require that we invest money in a certain amount. But at the end of the day, it's creating those habits and those practices where if you're putting that money away early, it grows quickly, it grows longer, and you end up with more.
I think for me, time value of money is definitely like a snowball. Once it gets bigger, people are always shocked as to how great it feels. I think retirement is something good to look at, but I also just look at your future self. And I say, if you're not saving now, you're actually taking money from your future self. That's what you're doing. That's the person who's going to have a problem. It's literally your future self. And you have to look at what your actions can be today, how much you're taking from your future self. And from those opportunities that you could be providing to what your future self might want to do. And I think actually dealing with things in sometimes 10 and 15-year increments is a bit easier often than looking at retirement. So, if you're in your 50s, looking at retirement isn't too bad. But if you're just starting your career, sometimes you actually want to look at it and say, well, what does my future career look like? Where do I want to be? And, somebody who's doing it in those 10 chunks, you can often then look back, and we're getting back to the point of impact, and say, am I getting the impact I want currently for my future? Because now we're measuring where it's going. And again, it lets you pivot so your future self isn't mad at your current self for what you've done. That's how I think of time value of money, is how angry is your future self to be mad at your current self.
I like that.
Yeah.
Well, there's very little I can add to that. Those are wonderful responses to the question. I would like to introduce the concept of compound interest. So one of the reasons why your money grows so quickly and rapidly over the period of time is that when you make let's say for example, if you make $1,000 deposit in a year, and let's say we're earning 10% on that. I know, but I am, I'm an optimist too, a realist with a huge dose of optimism. So if we're making 10% and $1,000 contribution towards our savings, like she indicated, whether it's a 15-year or a lifetime or a retirement goal, at the end of the year, you're going to be earning the $1,000 interest on that plus the 10% interest. So the following year, you're actually going to have that accumulating interest on top of the compounding interest of that. So that's how your money will grow rapidly over a period of time. And again, there's no time like today to start saving. It'd be wonderful for you to be able to start accumulating some of your personal wealth so that that interest portion actually is working for you and building for you. Yep. I'd like to bring another concept to a time value of money, and that is the concept of the real time value of your money. Mm-hmm. So let's say if you're working at a minimum wage job and you're bringing home $10 an hour and you go shopping, decide I need a new backpack for school. So you go and find a $200 backpack, which is a 50% off sale. So you're only paying $100 for it, but you need to consider how many hours of your vital, non-renewable life source have you committed to purchasing that $100 backpack when there are better options. So you spent $100 plus the tax on it, so $110. If you're earning $10 an hour someplace, you spent 11 hours of your non-renewable life source to purchase such a backpack when there are better options. With those 11 hours, you could have done a number of other things. There's that opportunity cost of what I could have done with those 11 hours as opposed to committed to carrying that certain backpack. Mm-hmm. You could have spent it with time with your elders so you can actually learn more about life's vital skills. You could have spent time with your children or your youth, your niece, your nephew, teaching them about some of the vital life skills. You could spend it on improving relationships with the people in your community or your partnerships with people, as opposed to spending that time at work to carry a backpack that you could have maybe purchased for $2 at the dollar store or at a secondhand shop or at a consignment shop. So when we talk about the time value of money, I want people to understand that there's also a real time value, a non-renewable real time value of your money.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much. That was all great responses. And so that brings me to question number 4. We often hear about good and bad forms of debt. What are the main benefits and shortfalls of using debt in a personal financial strategy? When is it beneficial to use debt, and when is it detrimental, and why? Why do companies use it? So we can tackle that not all at once. We can break that up a bit, but I guess to start, so maybe if you guys can share, what are the main benefits and shortfalls of using debt in a personal financial strategy? I know we spoke about that a bit today in class. So yeah, any one of you are welcome to start.
I guess some of the benefits of being able to use debt in your personal financial strategy is that you're able to purchase some goods or product that you're not actually able to purchase if you didn't have the cash on hand. I'll use a home as an example. If you're wanting to purchase a $300,000 home, and that's probably a good average price for Regina, about $300,000, most people don't have $300,000 in their pocket or in their account today to go out and pay in cash. So a lot of them will actually go and purchase them, like obtain a mortgage so that they're able to purchase the home to secure a healthier future for their family. So that's one example of people using debt. You can consider that in terms of a vehicle as well. If you're a rural student and coming from your First Nation community and commuting into Regina, transportation is vital. You need reliable transportation in order for you to meet your obligations and your commitments as a student. So if you don't have the money for a reliable vehicle, sometimes people will go and obtain a loan for a vehicle so that they're able to meet that obligation. So that's a good use of debt. And I want to encourage them also, if I get out a tip, that to purchase a new to you vehicle. It doesn't necessarily have to be a brand new sparkling vehicle that may cost more than your needs are.
Yep, absolutely. Did you guys want to add to that?
Sure. I think when it comes to debt, we like to look at, is it something that's going to be increasing your income? So it can be a business loan. I would even classify a vehicle in that if you're looking at it's a vehicle to get to your job or a vehicle to get to school so you can have higher income. So we're looking at, is that increasing your capacity to earn? Or are you taking on debt into something that's going to be an asset that will also increase the value? So we're looking at a house, a second home, something, even art, I would even say, can increase in value compared to things that are debt to just allow you to maintain your lifestyle, which would be credit card debt or a line of credit that's not bringing in money. What are you using it for? So if you take on the debt and you fast forward 5 years, has this increased in asset or has this increased your income? If it hasn't, that debt is probably not something you should be going into debt for. It's probably something you should be paying cash for. And I think it really is important to sort of see those two things. We do have to look at too, sometimes you can be taking on debt for the right reason, but have the wrong product. Going to school and putting it on your credit card, I would say, is the wrong product, but you're doing the right thing. So you want to match those two things up always.
Yeah, borrowing smart is easily one of the terms that I think really encompasses what we are as a society now. You really got to make sure that you're borrowing in the smartest way. So bang on. Anytime you can have a situation where you're increasing your net worth, where you're increasing some of the prospects you have, like so education borrowing and home borrowing and some of those things where you're seeing the spread, where you're seeing the consistent repayment of your debt. And yes, you obviously that goes up and down as we talked about with changes in plans, vehicles break down and some of those different things. But I think the key is again, when you talk about the trends of someone's borrowing habits, it's all about creating that net worth, creating the generation of wealth. And wealth is relative. It really is. You can feel wealthy. If you read like The Wealthy Barber, he talks about the reason he's wealthy is he's worrying about different pennies and different dollars, right? He feels wealthy when he makes X amount of money off of a dollar, basically, right? So it's something where as long as you're borrowing in the smartest way possible, sometimes there aren't avenues where there is the best available finance. So, certainly we've seen members come in where I've seen them firsthand where we've helped guide them through with advice, repaying some of these credit cards or collections or some of these things. And yes, on a collection basis, someone is paying 20%, 30% sometimes. But at the end of the day, if we can help move them through that, create a plan where they repay that, yes, they paid a significant amount of interest to get rid of that borrowing. However, we set them on a path where the next time they go to take that next step, it's something more, obviously from an interest rate perspective or some type of planning perspective, another step forward. So again, take the steps forward, borrow in the smartest way possible, and you'll find yourself in a really good place 5 to 10 years down the road.
I think too, I would like to add something that we mentioned today earlier too, is that people tend to view debt and loan often as bad. People think that they're failing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's not true. And one thing that I mentioned today was, Apple computers. I was bringing up, it is the most valuable company in the world right now. It's worth $610 billion. They have about $62 billion in cash. Does Apple have debt? That's the question. And most people find it hard to understand they do. They have $82 billion in debt. And it's because debt is a mechanical thing that can help you move forward if you have the right time, the right terms, and you're using it for the right purpose. Debt can be fantastic. And so this idea that just because you have debt doesn't mean you're doing well. It's a hard shift to get through on that one, but that can be a fantastic push to push you where you need to go.
Excellent. And that's been, I think I found that's been an eye-opening discussion with students this semester, right? Realizing that, certainly manage your debt well, right?
Yeah.
But it can really be an incredible tool within your life to get you where you want to go. And I think that they've responded pretty well to that discussion, right?
I have to apologize there because my response was based on just the simple first question.
Yeah.
I didn't respond to the entire question. So I just responded to the initial one. I do have more.
Yeah. And actually, let me
to share.
And I'll repeat.
For sure.
I'll repeat those last two questions just in case there's anything that you guys all want to add. So when is it beneficial to use debt, and when is it detrimental, and why? And I think that's absolutely So I know some of you have touched on that a bit, but I think that it would be great to kind of add to that and why do companies use it, right? And Apple's a great example. But yeah, Kate, did you have something you?
Yeah, I just wanted to add on to as well, and I really support the responses because I think those are fantastic responses, and they're very realistic and they're very supportive of students learning. Again, I spoke the positive side of attaining debt, so that it is able to actually increase your income and to add to your assets and add to your increasing net worth. Some of the detrimental parts of debt is having a personal ownership of it. And that means if somebody's approved you for a $10,000 credit card and you actually, as a consumer, think that that means that I must be a credible person, or you actually take a personal approach to that and you actually start spending like you are a high spender, and then you run into the concern of overextending yourself. Perhaps being unable to meet those obligations now because the debt has gone into collections of their struggles, that my friend here has said he's seen on a first-hand basis. And I believe we probably all have encountered people who struggle with depersonalizing credit, depersonalizing the ownership of debt and saying this makes me a credible person, so I'm starting to spend to that level. So that's one of the concerns that I think I talk about. I always try to have a humanistic approach to personal finances so that people can actually say, oh yeah, I can relate to that, right? We have a personal connection with that. So that's important. When it is beneficial to use debt again, when it grows your assets, it grows your income, it grows your net worth. A lot of times for businesses, sometimes they have to do it because if they're going to have capital gains or they're going to have capital purchases for, let's say, a baker who wants to buy a commercial grade mixer, and that opportunity will actually, having to borrow money to purchase it will actually improve their productivity, which will improve the company's bottom line, which will actually assist the business owner in improving their own personal income. So just a couple things that I wanted to mention and clarify in terms of my response. So.
No, thank you. And that's a great example that you just offered too, as to how debt can really help the bottom line, for many businesses, and certainly something we talked about today, class bits. So that's great. And thank you, all of you, for your responses there. Last question. Can you expand on the importance of building credit and maintaining good credit? We hear horror stories all the time about people racking up mountains of credit card debt and even eventually needing to claim bankruptcy. Are there any good strategies for young people to maximize the benefits of using credit cards without falling into a debt trap?
Should I start? Okay. The importance of building, establishing, maintaining your credit is extremely significant. More and more in this economy, in this economic landscape, we're starting to see employers seek credit reports for employees to see if they're viable employees for the business. We're seeing landlords asking for copies of the credit report or running credit reports to see if the renters are suitable for their opportunities there. If you have any intentions or hopes or plans of actually growing or developing a business, your credit report is extremely significant because when you start a company, the company has no credit history. So what the bankers, lenders will often do is take a look at yourself as the borrower to see how you're doing. So being able to understand that your credit activity is being reported, number one, that is being reported to more than one credit reporting agency, because a lot of times people will only seek out one credit reporting agency and not realize that the other credit reporting agency has a poor report on yourself. And number three, it's so important that you actually manage it just the same way that you manage every other element of your life. I encourage people to order their credit report at least once a year, especially if they're preparing and planning for a future large expense or a large acquirement of anything that requires credit. So it's really important that they manage that. If you're looking at rebuilding credit, it's really important that you start to empower yourself, with some knowledge, because whatever happened the first time was something that probably may not have been a clear enough learning experience for yourself. And I want to very clearly state that having bad credit or poor credit doesn't make you a bad or a poor person. It just means that there's some life lessons that you haven't learned yet. So take that chance to empower yourself and understand how credit works. Understand how your credit activity is reported and what happens there. Some of the vital tips I could probably provide to students is, number one, work on having a credit card. You don't need more than 1 or 2 credit cards to manage your life. If you're a business owner, you may require a separate credit card. You likely should have a separate credit card for your business activity, and don't put it together with your personal credit card. Make sure that the limits that you're approved for, and again, this is about having personal ownership in your financial dealings, make sure that the credit limit isn't too high, because sometimes if the credit limit is high, people will tend to drift over their budgeted amount. Leave your credit card at home if you're having problems with impulse purchasing. So leave it at home when you're going shopping. Only pay what you would pay in cash when you're using your credit card. And this includes planned purchases. If you plan on going on vacation, don't buy a $4,000 vacation on your credit card on impulse. Prepare and plan for that money. Put it aside in your budget. Have it captured in your savings plan that you're going to be saving for that, so that if you do decide to use your credit card to take advantage of any types of points or rewards programs, that you have the money set aside already to settle your debts. Make sure that you're always paying more than the minimum. Just be as responsible as you can with what you have, because credit, like many other resources, are something that we have to manage responsibly.
Fantastic. Thank you, Kate. Those are some wonderful pieces of advice for students. Thank you so much.
So, I think when I look at credit, I think when people tend to have a problem with debt or run into issues, it's often because for a number of years or a couple of years, they've learned that they can pay for what they can afford. And sometimes you've got credit limits or you have debt that doesn't have a defined purpose. Things can really creep up on people. And it's also a bit of the time value of money, where when you feel the impact of the choices you've made, and credit is usually some poor decisions that maybe you didn't realize were poor over time, and then the point of impact is now your credit's not very good. And I really like how you said you're not a bad person just because you have bad credit. And I think that that's one really important for people to understand. And also there's a pathway out of bad credit. And usually once you've got bad credit, it's because there's been a success of poor things that you've done in a row, and now you need to fix it. It's basically the financial world saying what you're doing is working, let's pause and let's reset. And often any indication, if you're seeing higher interest rates than somebody else might get offered, it's not your credit could be improved. That's when people, I love how you say get your credit report every year, because you want to see those changes. So when it starts to even look a little bit negative, you know there's things that you should be doing to improve it. And also to understand that having bad credit is a problem, because when you do want to take on debt or you want to start a business, the cost of doing that is going to be significant. And often the cost of that interest difference can be the difference between a positive and profitable business and a not profitable business, just by changing that interest rate. So it's a powerful thing. It takes a while to come in, and you really need to understand throughout your life, what can I pay for and what can I afford? They're two different things.
Great. Yeah, and I guess all I would add to that is that in our society, not having a credit rating isn't an option either. So we need to make sure that when we're educating individuals about that it's imperative that you actually do secure some form of credit in your name. Broadly speaking, super broad comment, before you graduate university. We can have a different discussion on, is that the appropriate way for an institution to look at someone of no credit versus bad credit or good credit. But the fact of the matter is if we don't have something on the runway for you as a person purchasing a home, if there's nothing on the runway to say, look, this is what the history looks like, a cell phone bill, a credit card, good repayment, some of those things, it becomes more difficult to secure something that would allow you to purchase a home or something like that. It is important that we, again, going back to habits and being that person that creates an early runway for the future self. I like that a lot.
Your future self gets mad.
Oh, right, because your future self goes, I was saving for this house for 3 years and now I don't have a credit rating.
There you go.
So yeah, it's exactly, yeah. So yeah, I guess like I said, like it's never too late to fix it. It's very important to make sure that we're creating those habits that give you the best opportunity to be your best future self. I'm totally going to steal that. And yeah, that's kind of the number one thing I think is part of this question itself, is to make sure that you're a well-rounded, well-educated person when you're making those choices.
Absolutely. And if I could just add one more thought on that, it's so important when we think about in terms of Indigenous knowledge and Indigenous development of skills. if you have excellent credit, if you have good credit, if you're establishing credit, if you're rebuilding your credit, those open up opportunities for you. And you have more choice in the things you can do and the direction your life can take if you're managing your credit, because there may be something that arises for you. Let's say for your child. If your child is a high performance athlete and they're on their way to the NHL and there's a tournament, you're going to need some source of credit to be able to secure that your child is traveling. You're going to need a credit card to book the hotel, to book travel. You're going to be able to have to provide opportunities and support the opportunities that arise for you and your family. And having good credit and managing the credit you have already, repairing the credit that was in the past, all vital to that.
Absolutely. Thank you, all three of you. That was a wonderful way to end, and